Welcome to the Branding Room Only podcast, where we share career stories, strategies, and lessons learned on how industry leaders and influencers have built their personal brands. Now, let's get started with the show. Hi all, it's Paula Edgar, your host of Branding Room Only, and I'm very excited about the conversation I'm going to have with my guest today, Heidi Friedman. She's a partner at Thompson Hine in the environmental group and co-chairs the ESG practice. She, however, is here to talk about her most recent work, a book she authored to share her personal story about life and love lessons, 104 dates, and the stories that led me to true love. It is her first book, and it shares a 10-year journey going from a failed marriage to finding the one and everything in between, including building a law practice at a big law firm as a single mom. Heidi, I cannot wait to jump into this conversation. Welcome to the Branding Room.
I am so happy to be here, Paula. You know, I'm a huge fan. I've been able to see you speak all over, and you always inspire me. So I really feel honored to be with you today.
Well, it's a mutual fan club, and I love those. So tell me, what does personal branding mean to you? How would you define it?
I feel that a personal brand is if someone saw your picture, what would they think of? What's the first thing that comes to mind? And that is when I guess you're successful in branding. But I feel that it has to be something that you're passionate about and you really want the world to see you as a caretaker of whatever that is. For me, it's certainly women in the law, as well as supporting other parties and other individuals and historically underrepresented groups. Lost my words there for a second.
No, I mean, I think I love the way you mentioned this because I often will relate the experience I have when I drink Coca-Cola, which I love very much, in thinking about branding, because it's like when you see it, I know what I'm expecting. When I drink it, I know what I'm getting. When I'm finished, I feel sad because the experience is over. Like it's like, so I feel that way when it comes to branding. Like what can you expect from someone based on that your connection with them, what you heard, et cetera, how it all comes together, and then consistency after that.
Absolutely, consistency is so important.
100%. So speaking of that, how would you describe yourself in 3 words or short phrases?
That is very hard, but I would say authentic, collaborative, connector.
Oh. I'm going to take dealer's choice to also add a word of my own. And I think you're a spark plug. Like every time I'm around you, I feel better. And there's not a lot of people I say that about. And I think
that like made my week. That's so nice.
So I'm adding that to it because it's my podcast.
I like that. I might steal it. That's fantastic.
You're welcome to have it. Do you have a favorite quote?
You know, I have several. My very favorite quote is actually an oldie but a goodie, which is be the change you want to see in the world. I really feel that we have to make things happen. And I've always tried to be that person to make things happen. But I also, if I can give you 2, another thing I live by and I talk to my kids about a lot is comparison is the thief of joy. And I think in today's social media world, and definitely I learned through my love journey, if you're going to compare yourself to other people, it's going to prevent you in the UBU motto I try to live by. And I really think it'll prevent you from having the joy you deserve to have.
So true. And I love both of those because especially at a time such as this, and whenever folks hear the podcast, it'll still be that time. So
Sadly, yes.
Yeah, we definitely need to be thinking about being the change. And then on the flip side I always say, I don't believe in competition. I believe that our paths are our paths, that our story is our story, and that looking at others for inspiration works, but not for comparison. So those
Absolutely, it's not pie. I mean, you know, you're not going to be gone if you take a piece or whatever.
Oh, now I'm hungry. Anyway.
I like cake better, but that's okay.
Same. So do you have a hype song? And this is like a song that when they're going to get full, Heidi's going on the stage, is going to be in front of client, et cetera, what's playing in your head?
I had to look up who sings this, but it's been my hype song. And it actually was when I was a single mom. When the kids had something big, we'd play it in the car and we'd sing at the top of our lungs. And it's the best. And it's Fight Song.
Oh, yes.
by Rachel Platten, and I didn't know who sang it, so I had to look it up. But it's still to this day when it comes on, I just feel this incredible energy to go out there and make it happen.
It's a good one. It's a good one. And I think it might be the first time that I've heard that one of my guests has said that one. So the mixtape is going to be real good. Um, so I love to ask this question to everybody who I interview because I find that it gives me a little more context into what I'm seeing in front of me. So
Okay.
tell me, where did you grow up and how did that shape your brand?
So I actually grew up in South Euclid, Ohio, which is a very small suburb, in a very, very tiny house in a room I shared with my sister. I was the first person to go to graduate school in my core family or, grandparents, all that kind of stuff. So that was a big deal for me. I put myself through college and law school. And I grew up in, an area where I would say it was middle class, but maybe even somewhat a little lower middle class. So, certainly had all my needs met and all of those things, but wasn't able to go away to summer camp like friends or things like that. And so that's where my upbringing was. And interestingly, I never really got very far. I went to Ohio State for undergrad and then Case for grad school. So I've sort of lived in Ohio in one way or another my whole life. So it's actually my dream to eventually go someplace else, but so far it's been good to me.
I love that. So you said you have one sibling?
I have two siblings
Okay, so you shared,
actually.
you shared a room with
So
your.
one is actually 10 years younger.
Mhm.
So she slept in her own room because she was in a crib when we were in that house. But yes.
So then give me the story from you at Case or you at Ohio State, wherever you want to go to, and how that
Sure.
ended up being what your career journey was from there.
I will tell you that my career journey is slightly boring, but you could
That's
also
okay.
call me extremely loyal and dedicated. So
And super
you can
focused.
twist that whichever way you want. So I basically graduated from Case in 95, but I spent my first summer working for a divorce lawyer because I thought I wanted to be a divorce lawyer, which is really interesting as things, came upon in my life with my own divorce and everything. But I couldn't stand watching two people fight over a chair. So I decided I need corporate law. This is not for me. And I worked at where I'm still am, Thompson Hine, as a summer associate back in 1994. And then I got the job offer, and I've been there now practicing for 30 years.
Yeah.
So I have had offers and thought about things, but it really has been the perfect fit, a really good platform for me. They've been really good to me through some really hard times. So a
Mhm.
lot of stability, and I've been able to build a fantastic practice. I have a work family that I adore. So it's been a great place, even though I don't have 10 moves to share with you that would probably make for a much more exciting podcast.
It actually, and when I was thinking about this story, the questions in relation to your story, I like this part about it because when I've seen you talk about your experience at the firm, you have spoken about it in that you've gotten support. You've been able to build, you've been able to innovate, and you've been able to make great friends. And I think that that's an important thing that is often lost in some spaces because we don't have communities that may be like that, right? Like, so that's wonderful that you are able to have some place that supports your growth and, when you have challenges and when you are flourishing. And I think that that's fantastic. So good, boring or not. I want to know, but tell me this, because one of the things I heard you say during a fireside, I think it was a fireside chat that you did. You
Yeah,
talked
with
about,
April.
yeah, exactly. You talked about being innovative and kind of seeing things and wanting to start something new. And that was what you did at Thompson Hines in terms of building the ESG practice there. How do you figure out your personal brand around something that is new and engaging and always shifting? How do you maintain the consistency that we talked about that is of building a personal brand there?
Sure, I'll use ESG as an example because you use it. So I went back to University of California, Berkeley, got my ESG certificate several years ago because I realized that I've been doing the E of ESG, which is environmental sustainability, for 30 years, but it really has become a much broader umbrella and a lot of things fall underneath there. And I had a lot of interest from clients around this topic. So I wanted to become much more of an expert, and I knew we could add value. And I loved it so much because my normal practice, although I adore what I do, I'm basically national counsel to large companies and I counsel them on environmental matters, many of which happened 30 years ago. So we're kind of looking backwards, cleaning things up, et cetera. And ESG is very much looking forward, adding value. So I loved that dichotomy and the ability to do both of those things. And then I really felt in order to build my brand, I think the first year we had an ESG practice, I spoke on ESG 40 times, and I am not exaggerating. I
Wow.
accepted every offer someone gave me. I mean, the good news was
Wow.
it was so new at the time, I really didn't have to redo my slides. So it wasn't that heavy of a lift, but it was like, and I wrote a bunch of articles. I did one for Bloomberg and one for Law 360 and all of that. And then we did two other things that I thought were really interesting that helped with our branding. One is we did a survey of our clients
Mm.
and we asked them what they were doing about ESG and then did a report on that. And we hosted a roundtable around ESG and got a lot of clients to participate. So it was really immersing yourself in this space in a way that you become a leader. And I will honestly say I spent a ton of time reading and learning and teaching myself. The one thing I believe in on brand more than anything else is being authentic.
Mhm, mhm,
If you are trying to, be someone else or be like somebody else or something like that, it won't work.
mhm.
So I feel that I felt that if I was going to put myself out there as an ESG expert, or at least as someone who was working in the space and had some benchmarking, because it really can't be an expert, it's so new,
Change it,
then I
yeah.
really wanted to have the experience and learn it. And so
Mhm.
that's how I developed my brand around that innovative topic, which has been a lot of fun.
And it's, I mean, you, without me feeding you the answers, gave me the right ones. Like, right? And again, it's right because it's yours. But
Okay.
when I think about building a brand and the innovation and how you kind of take something new, it is that, right? It's saying, I want to make sure I understand this, right? I understand the framework. I also want to continue learning, like that growth mindset piece of it.
Mhm.
And then I need to amplify. So people need to be able to hear and know me as a at least developing expert, so writing and speaking. So check it check. All those things. I love this.
I learned a lot from someone great. Yes.
Wow. I love it. I love it. I love it. Okay. So tell me this. I want to jump into the book right now.
Okay. Love talking
So
about the book.
yes, and I'm excited for this conversation. So your new book, let's say it one more time, Love Lessons, 104 Dates and the Stories That Led Me to True Love, is super personal.
It
So
is super personal. It's a
super
little bit of
personal.
a tell-all memoir, actually.
What made you decide that you were going to share your story so openly?
It was not an easy decision. And I definitely let my husband and my four kids all read it first to make sure everyone was comfortable. But it really was an interesting trajectory with the book because the first part of the book actually came about when I was turning 40. And at the time I was traveling all over. We were doing a big toxic tort case. I was doing depots of epidemiologists. I mean, I was just all over the place. And so I would take the interviews of friends who I asked, how did you know you were in love? Because I was truly convinced I did not know what true love was. I decided like, just don't know what it feels like. I'm a black and white, like it has to be concrete. You can't give me a gray field. I need to know something very clear.
Uh-huh.
And I was looking for the answer. And so I found all these themes and I wrote about 8 chapters
Mhm.
originally with each of these themes. And then I parked it on my desktop and I truly forgot about it for about 10 or 12 years. And then I
No.
found it and I was like, oh my God. And in fact, the original title was called Embracing the Gray because I thought it was so gray. But when I met my husband, it was completely clear as day. So then I was like, okay, well, that doesn't ring true. We have to rename it. So, and then I just started, oh, it'd be fun to write. And then a friend, Heather Ettinger, mentioned I should talk to her publisher who sent me to someone. I don't know. And all of a sudden it was a book. And I just felt that my team will probably tell you that I'm an oversharer on some level because I want people to share about themselves. And I think if we come into work with our clients, with our teams, and again, we're authentic and we're real people, it just builds a level of trust among the team, with the clients, that I really value. And so I feel like the more you know about me, the better it is on some level. And I just felt it's true. I said this to you before.
Yeah.
I truly feel like we're at a time where we need more love in the world. And I really feel that as an independent woman, I am RBG fanatic, independent woman. I could do anything I put my mind to. I'm convinced of that. But my life is so much fuller because of my husband, and I have so much more joy. And I just feel that it's a really good message that you can be independent and successful with the right person,
Yeah.
and that adds so much more to your life than just work, work, work. And so it was combine those messages. And then I would say at the end of the day, I wrote it for my 4 kids so they would not make some of the same mistakes that I make. And I really want them to find their true person that makes them a better person.
Oh, I love that. So I have so many things I want to say about what you just said. And one of my favorite things about the podcast is like, I'm always like, here's the things I'm going to ask you. Then I'm like, but we're just going to hold the conversation and let the spirit move
I'm
me.
game for anything.
So a couple of things. Weren't you scared? Because when I remember, so I've been married 22 years, and I remember when I got married, I was like, I only ever want to do this one time. I don't want to bare my soul and figure out all the things with somebody else. And so you had a divorce. That comes with a lot. So talk to me about what work you had to do to get yourself from the loss, right, of divorce to being open.
Failure.
Yeah. I don't think of it as failure. I don't. I think that if it's not your person, it's not your person. I think that it's a loss because you had expectations, but we can.
That's a good twist. I like that. But failure is okay too because you learn from it. So I'm okay. I do talk about this quite a bit in the book. I'm a huge fan of therapy. I've had a ton of therapy. My kids have had a ton of therapy. I probably have put my therapist, she now has a home on Martha's Vineyard or something. I'm sure I've paid for most of that. But at the end of the day, I really had to figure out more about who I am. For some reason, when I was younger, and I still haven't figured this out completely, but I did realize that I did not think of myself as worthy of the love that I have now for whatever reason. And it really had to build my self-confidence as well as see what works with others and see what worked for me and did not work for me. I needed someone to value my career as much as I did. I needed someone to value my kids as much as I did. But it was scary as hell. Are you kidding? I mean, I'll never forget my first date. It was so scary. And then I ended up reconnecting with a longtime camp friend from years ago because that felt a lot safer. But as I continued and I progressed, it was always a little bit scary. But I feel like every time you put yourself out there, whether it's for work or for life, it's a little scary, but you have to do it or you will not have the joy that could come with it. So I really feel like, I say to my kids all the time, half of it is just showing up or, just showing up is a huge part of your success in your future.
Oh, yes. Carla Harris, who I recently interviewed on my podcast, she says fear can't be a part of your success strategy.
Right.
Right.
I mean, there's so many times I wanted to lay in my bed and, back then it was probably watching like The Bachelorette. Now it would be watching Real Housewives would be the equivalent, but you just do nothing because it just felt comfortable. But I knew that there was a happiness out there for me and I felt that I deserved it and I wanted to find it.
So to your point about the first part of the book being something, well, I just love the concept because it's so authentically lawyerly. Like, I have a question, I need to figure out the answer, I'm going to do research and interviews. But what were some of the profound lessons that you learned about love from that process?
So Law 360 interviewed me last week and they were laughing at that too, because I said I'm a total data geek. When I need to figure out something, I will research it and figure it out. I need to know the answer. There's always an answer. So I decided if I took my legal and analytical skills and I talked to enough people, I could figure it out. The cool thing about that was I did realize, and I think I talked at the end of the day to about 50 people. I wouldn't say 50 couples because sometimes I talk to both people if I was
Mhm.
close to both of them, but sometimes I was only close to the wife or just close to the husband because it was a
Mhm.
law school friend. So I didn't always talk to the whole couple. So it was
Mhm.
about 50 people, and no one's answer was exactly alike. Everyone used different words.
Mhm.
But when I took my analytical mind and read everything, these themes just popped up. And
Mhm.
so I felt like it was almost a law school exam where you're reading a story and have to figure out what issues are in there. And it was very much that kind of process. So I do think that my training helps me. Sometimes I'm not sure it helps me in my life that much because I tend to be a serial overanalyzer, but it did help me in that situation.
Yeah. So tell me, what stood out for you about those themes? Like, what are some of the things that came up about love because I agree with you. I think that we do need more love, just in general.
We do
Um,
need more love. I mean,
yeah,
and they kind of apply to all relationships, right?
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
necessarily just
Mhm.
a love relationship. It was interesting as I talked to same-sex couples and things like that, and it was still the same theme. So I love that, like, love is love. I really reinforced that. So that was fun too. So I would say two of my favorite things are that person makes you your best self.
Mhm.
And I truly believe Will has 100% make me my best self. He
Mhm.
has taught me so much. He supports me endlessly. It's just fantastic. And that's probably the one thing I ask my kids whenever they're dating someone, is that person making you your best self? Or are
Mhm.
you catering to that person? Or is that person draining you in any way? And the same should be true of friendships, right? It should be the same way. And
Yes.
I'm going to be 55 next month. And so as I get older, I'm looking at my friendship through the same landscape to say, okay, do I weed people out that might not necessarily fit that bill?
Oh, yes. And I'm not going to let that pass without making sure that my audience heard that because while I love that this is about relationships, like I think that the most enduring relationships that we have are with our friends, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's, some are from, I have friends from when I was in elementary school,
Me too.
but having as a part of the process to look and see, does this still serve me, is a really, really, really important thing because I know that once I have, speaking of branding, when I have shed some folks who were more draining to me, and again, I don't mean be like, okay, bye, off with your head, but to say that you're no longer in the starting five, right? Like you're on the bench, and so you don't necessarily get priority in the same way. Everything else started to lift up and flourish, right? You
A
don't realize what's
hundred
holding you
percent.
down.
And
Mhm.
we always feel like we owe certain people certain
Mhm.
things. And
Mhm.
I'm just sort
Mhm.
of at the point where I'm starting to get over all of that. And
Yeah.
I think that it's important to have as much joy and happiness as you can by surrounding yourselves with people that lift you up.
Mhm.
And so that was super critical. And I couldn't agree more. And the other one that I think really stood out for me was the fact that these folks who had really successful relationships took turns taking care of each other.
Mhm.
So I am such a caretaker. If I
Mhm.
find out anyone's anything, I have food there. I really love caretaking. I'm not sure if it's the Jewish mama in me. I'm not sure what it is, but I love it.
Yeah.
And so I would say I think I have found, after lots of therapy, I
Mhm.
think I dated people historically that I had to take care of. And it was a very bad dynamic. And what really enthralled me is that these people really took turns caring for each other, just like a really good friend.
Mhm.
If a friend's just always asking you for things, it's draining. But if
Yeah. Yeah.
sometimes you're low, she's high. We
Mhm.
take my best friends. We take turns with our issues for the most part. And, we can help each other on occasion and you rise up together.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's been really important. My therapist told me a long time ago, it's almost like when something bad happens, picture a wave coming over you and you
Mhm.
want someone to have pick you up and pull you out of it.
Mhm.
And if every time you're the one having to save the person with the wave, you're just going to be tired and it's just not going
Mhm.
to work. So that was my other meaningful love lesson that I learned.
That is a great analogy, that wave that wave thing, because I can imagine myself because I also too, I'm a helper. I want to
Right,
help.
exactly,
I want to
exactly.
help. I don't consider myself a caretaker. I actually don't at all. But I'm a helper, so I want to fix things for folks. And I do think that people are often set to take advantage or not meet it, like sort of modulate that so that you always end up on the side of, okay, well, no one is doing that for me or not in the same way. So as I was skimming through the book, something that I saw made me smile because I had a similar experience. And so you mentioned at a part in the book that you went to the Wailing Wall in Israel and you put a note saying that you wanted true love. And when I went to Israel, I said, I want love forever.
I
And
love that.
and it was literally a very spiritual trip for me. But my viewers know, my listeners know that when I lost my mother, I was in my 20s, and my parents had been married for over 2 decades, et cetera. Like she was, my mother had raised me from when I was 3 years old. She was my primary mother, but not my biological mother. And
Okay.
I remember thinking, my dad has lost that love. And I never want to lose the love that I have. And I walked away, I was like, I should have asked for money. Like you know. But in the end, like the first part of what you said about what you recognize is that the person makes you better.
Yeah.
Is so like I could do nothing that I do without. And again, I probably could do it, but not in the same way that I do it. Like people
No.
always like, "Oh, Paula, you're so free." I'm like, "Yeah," because I know that things are being taken care of behind the scenes, or that I'm supported in X way all the time, and that is such a huge thing. It's such a huge thing.
Amen, sister. I mean, I think that is like so. I think maybe I even value it more now
Mhm.
because I didn't have it before. So
Mhm.
once you have it, it really becomes something that you treasure and take such good care of as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But I am also a helper. Olivia Pope was like my idol because she could fix everything. So I am a serial fixer. So I got lots of problems.
So when you were doing your own work and going on these dates, which just the whole concept of it, I'm like, oh my God. What are some of the things you experienced or learned about yourself in that process of going through 104 days? That just is wild to me. Because tell me what you
Okay, so it wasn't 104 people. Don't be alarmed.
all good.
It was probably like I was trying to figure out exactly. I think it was
Mhm.
55 people because I didn't keep once I met Will they threw it out, so I don't even know exactly. But it was I think about 55 people if I'm remembering because I did date three different people. One I dated for 6 months, and so we went out like 20 some times. So
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
wasn't 104 guys. That being said, it was a lot of guys.
I was gonna say, I'm
So,
like,
and a
Bill.
lot of Match.com, J-Date, Lunch Date, all of the things.
Yes.
And I would say the one thing I watched in myself
Mhm.
throughout the 9.5 years is I became stronger and stronger in understanding what I needed in my life and what I wouldn't settle for in my life that I may not have been as diligent about previously. And by the time I had met Will, I had really, I think, a pretty clear vision of what I needed my life to look like to let a partner into it by that time.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so it was I mean, some of these dates were 10 minutes. I was like out. It was really good to have little kids. So my daughter called, I'm so sorry, I gotta go. That kind of thing. So it was great, in terms of that process. I mean, I did meet some fun people who I keep in touch with.
Yeah.
It just wasn't a love connection, but I keep in touch with them. One guy I went out is now with a client, which was a very long, weird story, but not on purpose. So that, you never
Oh.
know. But I would just definitely say that it was a journey in self-confidence because I didn't have that.
Mhm.
And while it became frustrating at times, I became more committed to if I have to be alone, I have to be alone, but I'm not settling, which is really hard when you're alone raising two kids. But it was definitely where I was right before I met my husband, sort of over the whole thing, which was interesting. And
Yeah.
then he came along, through a really good friend, and it was such a gift.
So I need to pull this apart. There's a couple things I need to.
Okay.
So one thing I will say is so when I saw you post about this on LinkedIn, I was like, oh, I have to talk to her because only some people know that my secret skill set is love coach Paula.
Really?
So for the
Okay.
people in my sphere, I have two couples, a couple babies, married, and people who I have put together. And
Oh.
so I am often very much passionate. I'll say that. My friends who listen to this are going to be like, girl, obsessed. But about how people set up their online profiles for dating
Mm.
and the best practices around it because it's branding.
It is Brandon,
It is
actually.
it is branding.
It's
And
not but on some level, what I would worry about, I'm interested in what you think about this. Not that I'm
yeah,
interviewing you,
no,
but
please.
I'm super interested in this because that was the one time in my life
Mhm,
that I felt like I wasn't completely authentic,
mhm.
which I did sort of abandon all of that later, and I just sort of went on fix-ups. I was super done with the apps. But when I was
Yeah.
on the apps, that was the one time I felt that I was not truly authentic. What do you think of that?
I think that's why it didn't work.
Okay.
What I see often is people are trying to put what they think people will like
Yes.
versus who they are and let the people find them. And this is such an important, so, we talk about authenticity. I want people to be like, I like toast on Thursday, like the specific things and be like, you know what, take what you get, what you get, and you don't get upset. Because what
I
happens,
said that to my kids constantly.
exactly. But what happens
Right,
is that you put yourself out there as this thing, that
right.
you think and then that's who they expect.
Yeah,
And then you're like, oh, just kidding. It's
right.
everything.
Right. And I was borderline authentic. I
Yeah,
mean, the
yeah,
guys were not. I mean, I
yeah.
can't tell you how many times I showed up and the guy wasn't even looking like remotely that picture
Yes.
and things were awry and he wasn't really divorced and it was a mess. I mean, my favorite one,
Yeah.
I don't know if you got to this one yet. My favorite one is I did meet somebody on Match and I always
Uh-huh.
did my due diligence as a lawyer. We emailed back and forth
Yeah.
and all of the things. I Googled him to make sure he wasn't bankrupt or a serial killer, all of that, check the court docket. And then so I go 5 minutes into this date. And it's weird
Mhm.
because I don't remember all of them this clearly, but I literally remember what he was wearing, what he looked like. And he hands me this cease and desist order from Pepsi because he's I think either marketing or somehow he's working with dry Gatorade as a distributor, I guess it was, out
Uh-huh.
of his garage. And so he had this cease and so he was looking for legal advice from me on this
Oh,
cease and desist order. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. And I did leave after 5 minutes, but it was just my kids are calling. I've got to go.
that
So
is a hot
isn't
mess.
that funny? It's
That
so
is a
funny.
hot mess. I mean, I've had girlfriends, through the years who have been single, and I have heard wild stuff about dating. And that some of the people who I have connected with, I have a couple of best practices that I want to share on the podcast because I was like, oh, I'm excited because I get to talk about this and I want to hear what
Yes.
about that. So one is you have to have a picture that is a good picture of just your face. And then you have to have a picture that shows some skin and body. And here's why. Because at its core, we are animals. And so what we look at is attraction, right? We look at and you don't want somebody to be like, okay, I saw your face, that's fine, and I see anything else. And then, you know, everything else is not what they want because it's not like you can hide it. They're gonna find
Oh
out.
no, Sally, that
Right.
was the scariest part. Yes.
Right. So that is one. And the skin,
I did follow that rule. So far so good. Keep
good,
going.
good. And the skin part is important. The second piece when it comes to pictures is don't have pictures where you've cropped other people out. Because there are a ton
Amen
of
to that.
pictures
I
where you
agree.
see somebody's hand on the shoulder and then the person is gone, right? Or like, trust me, I've seen some egregious cutting up people. And so then the immediate question is, who was that? Why are they cropped out? Why did you use this picture? I'm looking at your judgment, right? A
Right.
lot of things. And I would say wear bright colors. Not in all the pictures, but at least in one. The photography and pictures you don't give context. It's just the picture. So I have to make up a story in my head.
Yes.
So I'm saying you chose this. So if this picture is terrible, then that is you. I'm questioning. I don't trust you, right? The person is not
Mhm.
going to be able to trust your
Mm.
judgment based on how you have done this. Okay, that's number
Paula
one.
the matchmaker. I like this. This is
One.
a whole new side of you I have not seen.
I
Maybe we
am
can collab.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I love this. I love this. My second thing is in all the questions that they ask you to answer, depending on the app, etc., just tell your truth. Not what you think people want to hear. Just answer the question. Do you want kids? Maybe. No. It's yes or no. I want to know, right? Because the thing is that there's some people, the questions are their pivot point, right? And so if you are wishy-washy, it's not fair. And again, you could be undecided is a fair point, right? However, usually, depending on where you are in your age range, you have a decided, like, you know where you want to go or you don't know where you want to go. And
Yes.
so
Agreed.
to be unclear is unfair
Yeah.
to folks who are looking at. My third rule is I don't believe you should have to spend over $50 on the first date ever. But I do believe the other person should pay. So now y'all can email me all you want. I'm not changing my mind. The point is this. I do believe in chivalry. I do believe in that you have to put a little investment into things that you do. I do understand, and I have both a son and a daughter, and I will teach my son, you have a $50 minimum, maximum on a date. Because it's true. Why should you be spending hundreds of dollars on somebody you don't know? On the other hand, I will also tell my daughter, and she already knows this, she's a college student, I tell her, always be prepared to pay, but don't expect to pay. And look, I don't want, so it's funny because as a married person, I pay for all of our meals. Like, again, it's how we have pooled money, right? But I literally pay for all the meals. People always like, oh, like they put the thing in front of somebody else. And I'm like, no, I'm paying for it. It is what it is. But those are some things I think that help you to just show up in an authentic space. I've seen all these memes where people are like, oh, I can't believe he didn't take me to the steakhouse on my first day. I'm like, are you lucky if I take you to the library for my first day? Like, I'm like, right?
That's why I always recommend just go have a drink. You can get a mocktail if you don't drink, one drink, that's all. You keep your commitments small. And
I love that. I love that.
yes,
Let me ask you
it
this.
has to be. I did do that. I almost never, in fact, when I went out with my husband, we were just meeting for a drink, which turned into dinner, which turned into, hanging out for 3 hours. But normally I always made it very clear that I only had a certain amount of time, but I could grab a drink because I do think that protects you a little bit from getting, stuck in a really bad situation.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's another sub rule. Just always be prepared to say, I don't think this is working. I have to go.
Yes.
Like, whether you say my kids are calling or what, like, always have an out point. One of my girlfriends is 20 minutes in, I need a call. And depending on what I say on that call, whether that it needs to be emergent or or everything is fine. And they would call it, and she'd be like, "What? Oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened." And two times she did it, and I was like, I don't remember what the key word is. I don't remember what she's supposed to say. Like, is it an emergency now? And she was like, no, it's fine. I was like, okay, girl, I need a better script. Tell me what I have to say. Anyway, moving back into this, can you tell me what was it about your husband that made you know he was the one?
That's actually an interesting question that I'm wondering if anyone has asked me before, Paula. I will honestly tell you it was more of a feeling than a thing, which is anti-Heidi, anti-lawyer, anti-research, all of the things. We just connected, and I talk about this in the book. You can't fit a square peg in a round hole or whatever the saying is. You can't force it. If you're forcing it, it's not right. I had to say that to one of my kids who was dating someone and did not work out. That's just forcing it does not work. So it was so easy. And I felt, to your point, like I could show up to be my authentic self. I felt like he embraced my crazy. We all have our crazy. He embraced the crazy pretty quickly. And it was just this mutual respect. He had a lot of sophistication. He was professional. It was the whole package. He was adorable. That helped. But it was more of this feeling than a thing. And I was saying, I think I explained in the book a little bit, that I truly believe in the concept of trusting your gut. And I would say that's the other thing I learned over my 10-year process. I did not trust my gut. I made some decisions in my life where my gut was saying one thing and I felt like I could not do that thing that I shouldn't be doing that thing, but I did it anyways. And my gut got sharper and sharper and sharper. as I got older, went through the process, had more dates, all of the things. And then I felt like it was really sharp at the end where it gave me the information I needed. And I'm telling you, I think I almost knew on my first date. I knew for sure my third date, and I talk about this in the book too. I had little kids, so I had not introduced any of these 50 some guys to my kids. No one. And that was my rule that they're not dating my kids. This is not a play date. We are just dating me. And so we left it at that. But Will met my kids. It took a little bit. It was like 6 weeks or whatever. It wasn't the next day, but it was pretty quick. And I was very sure, felt good.
So there's a theme that's running through some of the things that you've said that I want to pull out, because I think this is probably the most challenging piece of talking about love. And it's this. It is, you can have all of the strategy that you want, you can do all of the things, but I do believe there's a spiritual kind of magic. In the people who I know who are deeply in love, the universe conspired to bring them to that space. And so when you said, I knew this was going to be my last day and you were done, I was like, right. And then God was like, now I'm ready. Now that you finished doing all of that, now I'm going to bring you the person. And with my not scientific research, it's always been that. That being said, I think, I want you all to still listen, that you need to make sure you are ready.
100%. Ready is so important. I have a chapter that's all about luck.
Yeah.
Because I do think there's luck in love. And I do think it's a lot about timing. A quick story about my husband. He was living in Indiana and he was working for Duke Realty, which is a big, huge real estate portfolio. He had a huge job. And the 2009 market crash came and he lost his job. He was devastated. He was raising 2 kids. He was married at the time. It was just a complete disaster for him. That led him to moving to Cleveland to become the CEO of the port here, which happened, I think, 2 years after that in 2011. And if that horrible thing did not happen, he would have never come to Cleveland, would have never met my friend Ann. And, who knows if we would be together. And so it is one door closes, another opens. You just don't know sometimes. And I do feel that you have to be very ready, but I also feel like you have to give a little bit up to the universe, but you have to put yourself out there. I mean, that's really the point. You have to talk to people outside your circle. You have to you have to do all the things and let the luck happen.
So I have to share my quick love story, because I think this is important when you talk about something bad happening. So my mother was one of the victims in September 11th. And when she died, obviously I was devastated, right? Like my whole family was devastated. I came back to New York from there. I was living in California. I dated my husband when I was 14 years old. Quotation mark dating. Like, what are you even doing when you're 14, right? Like, it is what it is. But I hadn't spoken to him for a decade. And then he saw in the newspaper that my mother had been killed and reached out to his cousin, who had been my best friend, to say, if she needs anybody to talk to, tell her she can talk to me. And I have spoken to him every single day since then. Like
I knew that about your mom, but I didn't know that was the genesis. Wow.
Yes. So I would say my mother gave him back to me. And it is a powerful thing. And that's why I'm saying, like, it's a magical thing. Because at first when we got back together, I was like, well, this will be fun for a little while.
There you have it, 22 years later.
Right, exactly. And I'm like, and that's the thing, is that we are still having fun 22 years later. Another quick thing, we went to therapy before we got married, right? Before we got married, to just, solidify, figure out to do some things. And I recommend it as a best practice. But one of the things that the therapist said, and it was important that somebody recommended I got a male therapist. So we got a male therapist to be our marriage counselor. And he said, every morning, wake up and be grateful for the person you're with, even if they get on your nerves the night before. And I got to tell you, that is key, because I'm like, I love my husband. I'm grateful for my husband. Could you please do the laundry? Like,
a little give and take.
But it's a reminder, right, of the butterfly feeling that you get from the person who you love. And, when people talk about folks who they love. And I love these conversations. They smile. Like when you talk about your husband, your
Right.
face lit up.
Right.
And
That's why I loved, that was my favorite part about interviewing people is
yeah,
people just, I think they don't get asked that question very
yeah,
often and they just lit up and it was
yeah,
so much fun and I was so funny. I was at a work meeting, IADC
yeah.
actually
Mhm,
last week, and we were at this big table and one of my really good friends is dating somebody post-divorce. He's never been married. I
mhm.
spent half the night listening to their story and how they met and convincing him he should ask her to marry him later the next day. So we'll see what happens with that. But I just still get fascinated by how people are brought together. I love love stories. I don't know. I love love. I've always liked, it sounds super cheesy, but I do.
But it's so true. And I like that in the book, you also talk about the sort of science of it, right? The science of what we need as human beings. I studied anthropology as an undergraduate student,
Yes.
and so I know very deeply that human touch is an important part of how we navigate the world, like to be able to actually be embraced and held and right. And it's a part of what makes you thrive. And so my recommendation to single people is like, even if you don't have somebody to be with, like make sure assuming you are able to, you get somebody to touch you every week, like every other week or every month or whatever it is, like a
Mhm.
masseuse or somebody or getting your nails done. Just the human contact is a part
Right.
of how we love each other. So I was not going to let you go off of this without bringing it up. We don't have to talk about it, but I just have to let y'all know there's a chapter on sex, y'all. So, so
It's not super.
I don't care. It's in there.
Okay. There is. I
It's
will admit.
it's a selling point. I'm letting y'all know that that it
We
is
will
in
leave it
there.
at that, though.
That's no, that is right. That is exactly
Okay.
all I'm going to say is because I do think it is important to also remember all of the different aspects of relationships, and that is all I want to say. And you should read it for
1000%.
all of the things, including that. So, so what do you were already a professional woman in the space when you were, you weren't, a college student. You were a professional woman when you were on this second love journey.
Mhm.
There are a lot of people who are in this space who are, approaching midlife or in midlife who are have lost love or are still looking for love. Any advice for them from what you have learned and what you have experienced?
Absolutely. Two things. I've probably in the last 3 days had 5 emails or LinkedIn messages from women who are single
Mhm.
moms and divorced and looking for love and saw the book and are relating. And oh my God, it just made me elated that I touched a chord. And that's my dream, is to help these people. But I
Yeah.
have sort of become the divorce coach
Mhm.
around Cleveland. And I think it's probably because I am connected to a lot of people. I did get divorced when I was in my 30s before everybody else, and I've certainly come out the other side. And so I tend to meet with women when they're at what I say is the very bottom of a very steep hill.
Mhm.
And for whatever reason, they decide that marriage wasn't working
Mhm.
and they have to climb that hill. And it's really hard to see down the other side. And
Yeah.
so I do try to give both very practical advice, like divorce lawyers, what's going to happen, the kind of substantive specifics. But I
Mhm.
also say it's a time for you to step back and just focus on yourself and your family and your profession in a way without the noise. One of the things I did, for example, when I got divorced, I took myself off all these boards. I loved being on boards, nonprofit boards and things like that. And I just took a step back and I decided, oh, they'll still be here when I'm ready to step back on. And they sure were. So it was great. And then I always say, this is something I just told one of my kids yesterday. I think you need to look at the next step, not the whole staircase, because
Mhm.
sometimes I love that visual. And then sometimes you got to sit your ass on that step and stay there for a minute. You don't
Yeah.
need to climb the steps or the ladder or whatever. There's always this visual of women climbing ladders and heels and stuff. I'm
Yes.
like, put your
Holding
sneakers
bags.
on and sit on the step for a minute, sister. Like you don't need to keep going all the
Mhm.
time. And I actually made the choice in my firm to
Mhm.
stay non-equity partner
Mhm.
for a number of years because of a variety of reasons.
Mhm.
But I just needed that less pressure. I went on a flex schedule a little bit. I did a couple things that made my life more bearable. And
Mhm.
I'm still able to like come back and be an equity partner and have a big practice. And I still, I figured out how to do it. I mean, you can't do it all. It's just impossible. I think RBG said you can do it all, just not at the same time. And so you just have to make really important strategic choices and not feel like it's not a marathon, you know. Oh, it is a marathon, it's not a race. Is that what it is? It's like
I'm not running no matter what, but I understand.
I got all my analogies mixed up today.
Understood. I always I'm like, whatever it is, I know I'm not running, but I get it. Yeah, I believe very deeply in something I always often say, which is shed to get. Get rid of things to get the things, get rid of things to get the things. Because often I think the state, and this is a lot of people, just general, it's not just a gender thing, but that women often take on so much and
1000%.
understand how that weight. And, we're not socialized generally from a gender perspective to prioritize ourselves. So when you said, in terms of your advice too, is you have to put yourself out there. That is such a key point, because people are like, the person will fall in front of me. They will trip on a stone in front of me and into my arms.
That won't happen with a client or a boyfriend. I promise you, either one.
Exactly. I'm like, I mean, you probably need to be outside at least to even get to my decision.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, one takeaway, and I believe this aligning with love, romance, relationships, and also branding, is that you have to put yourself out there, right? That you have to have people have the understanding of who you are and how you add value in order to love you. And that means, to your point, in work and in love and all of the other pieces. So, I kind of love that alignment. I forgot that I wrote a note down, and I don't want to forget that I need to come back to the fact that you actually ran the people you were dating through to see if there were any, like, let me just pull up all of the credit card report. I love that.
No, I mean, listen, I'm a lawyer. I do my due diligence. I did end up going on one date, and it was very odd. And, listen, we all have hard times, but I think he was either bankrupt or involved in litigation or something. I figured out afterwards. And after that, I'm like, okay, I'm checking court records before, and part of it is, if someone's not divorced, it won't, you know what I mean? They say they are. That's an interesting thing as well. So it's a protective mechanism. I also say sometimes you just have to follow your heart. And I do believe that if you need to be careful though. And it will, being out there will help you make it happen.
Agreed. So I knew that this was going to go by quickly. That is the nature of all of the things. But I really, really love this conversation. Tell me what you do for fun. What is the fun stuff?
For fun, I love yoga. Actually, yoga is where I met my husband, not because he was a yogi, but because I have a crew at yoga that became really good friends. And one of them, who I hardly knew that well at the time, was the one that fixed me up. So, and Pilates, all of that stuff. I love travel. I love walking around Shaker Lakes here in Cleveland with my husband, and we only have one joint baby, and his name is Felix, Felix Friedman. He's a cur that we adopted, and we are obsessed with him. I'm now buying him sweaters and things because I have no kids to take care of. See, the caretaker thing. So I'm taking care of the dog. So I love that. I would say the one thing that brings me more joy, if you put Will aside, because being with him brings me the most joy, is my girlfriends. I just love getting together, having a glass of wine, and just being with my friends. It truly, I love your spark plug, because there's probably a handful of women that are literally like my spark plug. They give me energy, and when I'm with them, I come back feeling so much better than I did before. And that really is what I love to do, other than being with Will, probably the most.
And I kind of love that you brought that together. The fact, I obviously haven't read that part of the book yet about meeting yoga, but one of my best practices in terms of dating and finding your person is to tell your people that you're looking for your person.
150%. And you have to join things.
Yes.
So my stepson, my oldest, just moved to a new part of California. And I said, you need to join clubs. So he joined the running club, the scuba club, all of these things. And he was so excited to tell me that he was taking my advice. It was fantastic. So it really is important that you'll never know. And even like me, even if you don't meet your person while doing that thing, I met my person through that thing. So it really is important to go beyond where your normal story. If you're in your normal, I almost say it's like a bunch of round circles, and the broader it gets, the better chances you have. And the narrower you are, you can see what happens.
Yes. And be vulnerable and say, I'm letting you know I'm looking for someone, because you then make the universe start to do what it needs to do. And you make them understand the assignment. Now they're looking for you. Like you, again,
I love to fix people up.
I mean,
I honestly, I get a huge thrill when someone asks me. It's fantastic. I mean, if I see you at a cocktail party and you're single, I'm going to ask if you're on the apps. What are you doing? How can I help? Who do I know? That whole thing.
Exactly. Okay, so on my podcast, I ask everybody the same two questions. And one is this: what is the authentic aspect of your personal brand that you will never compromise on?
It's an interesting thing right now, because I would say inclusion. And for women and other historically underrepresented groups, the world's under a lot of pressure right now to push DEI aside. And that is in my bones, part of who I am. I've spent my entire 30 years doing things to make sure that those individuals can have success in law and life, and I'm not giving that up.
I love that. So branding room only is a play on the term standing room only, because I am clever. So, what is that piece of Heidi, that magic about you that would be everybody's in a room, packed, no seats in the house, only standing room to experience about you?
I do think I am the ultimate connector. Is that an okay answer? I don't know if that's what you're looking for in terms of, I certainly wouldn't be doing like a dramatic read of my book or something. I don't think that would bring a crowd, but it was, for example, I did a pop-up at yoga this weekend with my book, and this yogi friend was selling her vegan cookies. She just started making them. And by the time we were gone, I had connected her to my dear friend down the street who owns a coffee shop, and now she's going to have her vegan cookies. And I just love that, though. Nothing makes me happier. And I try to do that all the time. And that's really where I find my joy.
Well, the answer is right because it's yours. So then yes. It works out very well for me.
I'll take it then.
Tell everybody how they can find out more about you and about your wonderful book and about the work that you do, and just how would you like them to connect?
Sure. The book is on sale at 133 different places, but the easiest place is either barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. It's called Love Lessons, 104 Dates and the Stories That Led Me to True Love. I would love you to follow me on Instagram at Love Lessons 104. I also have a Facebook page that has the exact same title as the book. And on LinkedIn, you can just find me at Heidi Friedman or at Thompson Hine's website. So I'd love to hear from all of you. I actually created an email as well, lovelessons104@gmail.com. Happy to answer any questions. I'd love to hear your love stories if you're willing to share them, or your questions as well.
Oh, I love that. And I just thought about an idea. Listen, everybody, tell that person who needs to love better, needs to get love somebody else, whatever the thing is, they need to read
spread the love
and spread the love. We need more love. Everybody, tell a friend, because we do need to spread more love. Heidi, thank you for joining me in the branding room. You are welcome to come back anytime you'd like to talk about whatever you want.
So honored. It was so much fun.
All right, everybody. Talk soon. Bye.
Take care. Thanks.